It's 10:06. I say, let's get started. We'll do our introductions. I'll kick it off. My name is Garrett Sauls. I work at InterWorks. I'm a content manager. That's a fancy way of saying corporate English teacher, but I get to do fun stuff like this, talk with data people, get the smart ideas out of their brain and ask them just riveting questions. So I'll pitch it over to Annabelle, who will introduce herself, and then she can introduce our guest, Adam.
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Annabelle Rincon. I'm living in Switzerland. I'm a Tableau visionary and Tableau ambassador. I'm passionate about Tableau data visualization and also enablement. And it's a great honor to receive my friend Adam for the second time in 1 year and a half. So let me read some bio from him because I don't want to, to forget anything. So Adam Mico most recently served as a principal data and analytics strategist at a global biotech company, leading data visualization, Gen AI enablement, Tableau administration, data governance, and leadership across analytics strategy. So he has been rewarded 4-time Tableau visionary, 6-time Tableau ambassador, and 2 times, I'm very jealous about that, recipient of the Michael Christiani Community Leadership Award at the Tableau conference. He also published Author from Back, a Dreamforce Golden Hoodie recipient, and the founder of DataFam Rising Stars. He's a statistic in support diversity and inclusion effort, which include neurodiversity, and is a big advocate of diversity and inclusion. And I think that's already a lot. You know, that's why I needed to really read my notes. And maybe Adam, you can deep dive a little bit and tell us what changed for you in the past year and a half. Maybe you had new GPTs or AI initiative.
A lot changed. In fact, the day after we had our interview, I had a septic joint and had emergency surgery. Woke up 2 a.m. with a sore wrist, and then it got more sore. So I went to the emergency room, and it was swelling more and more. And they're like, "Oh, that's a septic joint. We need to get you emergency surgery." And then I had surgery 2 months later to remove basically a row of bones from my wrist. But now it works really well, and I'm thankful to have had those surgeries because obviously you don't want to mess around with sepsis. It's difficult. So, but yes, a lot since then has changed. I built a ton of GPTs. A lot of them I'll kind of be sharing with you today and going over a little bit. The other thing too is that Annabelle and I have been collaborating quite a bit. She's my partner in crime in a sense, where we do a lot of blogs together and so forth. A big one during the year was covering Tableau Next. Annabelle really wanted to start to deep dive into it, and I was kind of there already, but I wanted to give my perspective for use cases in businesses and why it matters to businesses. So we tag team on that, and we had 4 or 5 of 20 plus minute blogs. So it was basically an ebook worth of content. So that was a lot of work. And Annabelle is working with me right now with DataFam Rising Stars. So that was an initiative I started 5 years ago. This is our 5th year. And it's a lot of work. And partnering with somebody that also likes to do a lot of work and is a great partner is just tremendous. And it makes it a lot more joyful rather than dreading it. So she understands exactly what we need to go through to publish this. And it's almost like a second full-time job. In addition to that, I joined the board of Dreamin' and Data, which is a nonprofit organization. Included in that is we're planning for a conference in Chicago in May, right after the Tableau conference. So follow me on LinkedIn and our Dreamin' and Data. We have a separate page for Dreamin' and Data. So follow that page for updates. And we also have a website too. Many other things I've been working on, basically studying AI and generative AI, studying governance, working a lot on governance and understanding what that is. Applying looking at the holistic nature of what the future of analytics is, just because I don't want to be left behind. So a lot of the tools I built helps me understand what that future looks like. And I want to help people come along with me, just because if you're not utilizing tools right now to help scale your capabilities, it's going to be very difficult to catch up. So I want people to come along, and that's why I share a lot of tools publicly and all for free. And that's a big thing for me. The only thing I ever charged for was a book with Pact Publishing, and I wouldn't have written it if I didn't have a team behind me and Pact pushing me along and telling me, we need something out there. We need something out there. And that's the only thing I've ever charged for, because I do really love the opportunity of giving back and sharing tools, because a lot of people in our great community, whether it be Gen AI, and the DataFam community, share a ton. And pretty much everything that's shared is free, and often better than what the company puts out themselves, and more creative. So it's very interesting to see what people come up with. And those are things that you wouldn't generally think about before. So yeah, I've been quite busy since the last time we talked, but enjoying every moment of it.
Yeah, it's funny, Adam. I was just about to ask so many questions that you literally just answered in succession. I was like, why did you want to get into AI? What is it about giving back to the community that you enjoy? But yeah, I mean, you really just answered those things. I mean, giving back.
We could deep dive in them. I'm happy
No,
to
I
do
love
that.
that.
I'll consider that the overview.
I love that. Maybe this is an interesting question, because I know both of you have been part of, in particular, the Tableau community for quite a while. I mean, what is it about that community that helped you along your journey? What are you appreciative of that community, to where now obviously you're giving back to that in a big way, and it meant something to you? But what about that community really stuck with you?
Let's start with Annabelle. I
No,
love
when I
putting you on
was,
the spot.
yeah, it's okay, don't worry. When I was learning Tableau, I would say that I was like navigating the Tableau forum a lot, asking questions myself, but also like trying to see if someone has the same issues as me and how it solve it. So that's really helped me on the journey. And I have to say that each time I ask a question or I reach out to someone, they were very, very nice and very helpful and generous with their time. So that's why when I felt that I could give back, that I knew a little more, I start doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was pretty much a hermit. So I worked in the public sector. I reclassed the highest level I possibly could reclass to. I'm looking at, I'm counting down the days of retirement. So I wasn't like a social media person at all. I hated everything about it. I despised it. But then I kind of looked on Facebook, and Tuan Wong, who ran Tableau Magic, he kind of encouraged me to do more and be part of the DataFam community. And at that point, I did a lot of stuff behind the scenes before that. I used to be a music reviewer and a lot of different things, but just pretty anonymously, going behind my brand and so forth. At the time, not really sharing my name or anything about myself. So this time I'm like, I don't want to be a hermit forever. And I'm going to give it one last try and just be as authentic as I could be. And there was a person in the community by the name of Hunter Hansen, who was out and autistic and sharing his autistic journey. And really at the time when I started with the community, I had probably shared it with maybe a handful or two handfuls of people, the people that needed to know. But I thought, if I'm going to put myself out there, I have to be my authentic self. And he kind of helped pave the way for that. And the other thing that really drove me into community, because I've been into a lot of communities, there's message boards for groups or interests and so forth back in the day. But the thing is that you don't really meet up with them and form real bonds with people. And when I met people in person, and this was when I went to Cincinnati and met Kevin Flurlidge, Dee, there was Jeff Schaefer and a number of other people. And I saw that they were just as great in person, if not better. And Sarah Bartlett, who came all the way from England to join the Cincinnati Tug and whipped my butt in Viz games, which was kind of funny. But it was just amazing to see and spend time with those people and understand they're just as good, if not better, offline as they are online. And that just kind of kept going. I mean, that's how Annabelle and I became friends. Mm-hmm. We kind of came up at the same way, same time. We had the same titles. We're both social ambassadors. We became visionaries at the same time, and all that stuff. And we had our own challenges and our own unique perspectives on the community. And a lot of that helped us form a really good partnership and bond, because we could see it through similar eyes, but different eyes as well. And you do form a lot of those real friendships that you would never have with any other community. I mean, I've been in Gen AI for 3 years and I don't have close friends from the Gen AI community. The DataFam community is its own thing. So it's amazing to be part of that.
That's great. In terms of Gen AI, I mean, I love talking about that. You were our first guest on Data Forum, and you shared some of your GPTs. I'm curious, it's been a year and a half. What, kind of in a snapshot, what was the state of the AI landscape maybe a year and a half ago, what you were building, what you could do compared to where we're at now? What's changed?
That's a great question. And it's kind of funny because in April of 2025, so that's less than a year ago, I wrote an article on creating custom GPTs, by far and away my most popular blog article I ever wrote. But then in November and December, when the new models came out, I noticed that it was completely, pretty much obsolete at that point. Everything changed. When you're building GPTs before, everything had to be rule-based. And it wasn't context aware. You had to make really firm and concrete rules. But now there's so much contextual awareness that you could do things that weren't possible before. So it understands things. And in fact, when you create a bunch of rule-based GPTs, or some people would refer to them as GPT wrappers, WR, not RAPP. But when you build custom GPTs, if you do apply a lot of rules these days, they become very brittle. So that's the one thing, is that when you're building for older models, and it could be if you're building skill MDs and so forth, for other tools like Claude or Gemini, you have to consider how contextually aware it is, because if you do include a lot of rule-based things, it's very difficult for it to really do what it's intending to do. And the main difference now is that you have to think in workflows and systems. And the fortunate thing for me, I tend to already think in systems and workflows. More abstractly, I don't write a bunch of process flows or anything like that, but it's really helped me wrap my head around the new changes and what the future changes will likely be when it comes to building custom GPTs or skill-based markdown documents and so forth.
And you had
so I had to rebuild everything from scratch.
Exactly. You had some challenge recently due to a product update. Exactly.
So everything, even my public and ones at work, I rebuilt 3 or 4 dozen GPTs at work just because of the changes from 4.0 to 5.2. And that's the one thing that you really have to think about when you're building these GPTs. It's not a set and forget it. It's not a project, it's a product. So when there are changes in models, you really have to understand what those changes are and how that impacts what it does and what it's intending to do. Because you don't want people going to GPTs and coming away thinking that it's an awful experience just because you didn't update to the model. And that's really important for me, is that, those are things that keep me up at night. It's like, how's the model impacted now? Even though some of the GPTs don't have a lot of activity and so forth, it's very important for me that the one person that goes on it has a really good experience with it, or the best possible experience they can have.
For sure. Got 2 questions for you. So Will, our friend Will, is asking, how would you improve the GPT store from OpenAI? He says, I don't think there's been many updates other than the models since it launched. Any hot takes, feelings, ideas?
Well, a lot, because it's now kind of it's an endless pit. So I don't know when and if they'll be making updates to that particular store. I would imagine that has to be on top of mind because people are asking about that all the time. But it's very difficult to find what you're looking for. There's no filters, for example. For the most part, you're just looking randomly for stuff. So you have to kind of know where a GPT is, especially if there's millions. I imagine there's millions and millions of public custom GPTs out there. The other thing, too, there's really no sense of sorting. So there could be an old GPT that was created on an old model that hasn't been updated, that may not be very good, but it shows up first in the search results because it's one of the older ones. And then more people use it because it's showing up first, and they're getting a wrong idea what those GPTs are and the capabilities of what you could do within that particular thing within a GPT. A good example is if you're looking up like Tableau product assistance ones. There's many out there, not very many good ones, and most of them haven't been updated at all since prior models. I mean, they were built like right when the custom GPTs came out and haven't been updated. There's really no way to filter out that. So having something and having a better curated set and filters and capabilities within the search to find what you need to find is a huge thing, just because I know that's endlessly frustrating. I mean, if you're looking for mine, what I've done is I put them all on my blog. So if I have all the featured quote unquote GPTs I built, I put them on the most recent version of my blog and I update that kind of along. And that's not fun. It would be a lot easier if I could just have my own portfolio, just kind of like Tableau Public has for each person. They don't really have that. If you search my name, and I'm also intentional about putting my name in as many GPTs as possible, just so if people are searching for my name, they could find the GPTs I built. Some I don't do that for, maybe because the title is too long, or one I recently built for the Florida twins blog. I didn't put my name on it because it's intended for them. It's not intended for, as finding my GPT per se. So, but that's one thing I would use to work around it. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, I would say, with the ChatGPT store that hasn't been, they haven't done anything with it since ever, pretty much, which is kind of frustrating and disappointing. But I have some friends that work there, so I'm not going to say too much about that. They know.
That's okay. It's early days. Yeah, they'll evolve, they'll grow, especially as things become more ubiquitous and stuff like that. I imagine we'll see those sorts of changes. Denise had a great question, and this is one that there are obviously a lot of my colleagues use AI various things for their work, but in the context of data and analytics, Denise is asking, how do you get started in AI? And with the express caveat that she works in confidential data and can't necessarily use the internet. So how do you, is there a use case for, getting started with AI, especially when you work with sensitive data?
So one of the things I would do is consider, if you're working with data, make it PII proof. So I have a mock data generator in as a custom GPT that's actually rated pretty well, and people love it. Basically, it creates mock data that's realistic. And the biggest hurdle I have was geography, because I want to make realistic geography, but with mock data. So that was the biggest hurdle I had building that GPT. The other part was I recently received feedback on utilizing Faker for Python to make it more realistic, and that was helpful too. But one thing I would do is, especially if you're working on POCs and whatnot, is utilize something like my mock data generator to create the data set that you need to create and work with, and then utilize technology to analyze that data. And that's something you could share and kind of crowdsource as well. So one of the big things about building in public is that people can comment, people can provide feedback, and people help you improve your product. And that's super helpful with that. So you don't necessarily have to use private information. In fact, I would say never do that. Pretty much every single of my GPTs have some strong ethical, every one of my GPTs have strong ethical guidelines related to what the GPT is. And it's important that, but most people don't really consider that, unfortunately. So that's the thing you have to think about, is that you have to protect yourself, make your own mock data. So for example, if you're using one of my GPTs, don't bring in the fields and all the data and so forth. Just highlight what fields are being used and ask for mock data related to those fields. And then it would give you a realistic data source that you can work with and do some analytics from, as opposed to bringing in real data that's confidential or very or your employer's data that should never be on there. The other piece too is that if you do work with an employer and they have an enterprise solution for GPTs, that's super helpful too. So they have to apply an AI policy with those enterprise solutions. So you're kind of helped along there, but they also may remind you to be very careful about what you share, even if they're not keeping your data or storing your data, ChatGPT rather. So that's important to think about too. But to get started, utilize mock data. Long way to answer that question, but
no, that's great. I think
long
is good. Context is good. You know what I mean? It's always better than a short answer of just like start here, the end. This is kind of a follow-up, and maybe this might be one that I'll let you choose, Adam, if it's something we can answer as you're going through one of these that maybe you've created. And then I want to ask Annabelle a question as well after we ask this, and then we can get into the demo portion. But William Moorhead is asking, what is the best process or best practice for creating an agent for agentic AI? With confidential data, can we create an agent behind our firewall to run analyses or our confidential information? So any best practices, things there in terms of creating agentic AI?
So if it's confidential information and it's on a public platform, I would not suggest you do that. You would definitely need something in between to block that data coming through that public API. So you want to make sure I would say like you would have to develop your own product on the back end, especially if it's confidential information, and utilize a tool that aggregates as opposed to brings all the data in, or somehow creates metadata as opposed to bringing in all the data. Metadata is often safe, but it's not 100% safe, because a lot of times your employers won't even want metadata to come through, depending on what that data is. So those are things that you really have to think about, but ultimately don't utilize it with any sort of public GPT. You would want to build something on your side of it and make sure that you have clearance from cybersecurity or your security team at work before you do anything like that, just because it's super important to do that. And that's why I always suggest, if you can, utilize mock data. Mock data gets the job done, and it tells you exactly, it's great for MVPs or POCs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Is it possible, because a lot of your GPT are free. I was wondering if it was possible to take, for instance, your Viz Critic GPT and have it inside my company. So, like the image doesn't float around and I still receive Viz Critic under like confidential data. But I don't think that is something possible, right?
That's possible. So for example, if your company has ChatGPT Enterprise, they could elect to turn off access to custom GPTs or turn on access to them. Most companies would probably not turn on access to them, just because they don't want any potential for any private information to get through. So that's a big thought there. But again, utilize a mock version of that, or even if you build something internally, you could have a coded version of it where it can review that coded version of it as well.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna save the Annabelle question, and we have another question from Mitesh here that I see that we can ask towards the end. But Adam, I wanna get into the demo portion. I want you to do a little show and tell, because I think we're talking a lot about these things, so it's like, all right, let's see them. So yeah,
Sounds
I will.
good.
Let me know if you can. Yep, you can. Perfect, and we'll dive right in.
Can you see
my?
And then
we can vote. Yes, and then we can vote what is our favorite.
Ooh, I like that.
So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, just to give you an idea. But one thing that's important that I do for pretty much every single one of my GPTs is I give you a help document up front. Hardly anybody provides any sort of help documentation or anything like that on their GPTs, and I think that's a major missed opportunity. My job as a builder is to make sure that you understand it and can work with it. So to give you an example of what that does, and it's usually the first one I have as a conversation starter. So when you're going to a GPT, it's like, what can this GPT do? So then I'll share a lot of information about this GPT. And of course, it's going a little bit slow now because it's live.
So I do the same thing.
So basically what I did, and the one thing I do with my GPTs, just to be upfront about that, is that they're all proprietary, which means that I have security that locks down and explicit instructions and so forth. But I want to make sure that you have the ability to understand exactly what it does. And I try to be as transparent as possible. And that's part of the reason why I have that question. So it basically tells you what this includes and what's covered here. And also I do have some old Tableau blueprint documents as well, which is great for customer success and so forth. So there's thousands of pages of documentation. So it kind of tells you exactly what it can do. One of my favorite use cases for this, and I'm not going to share all this with you, but I just wanted to give you an example of, when you're working with the GPT, it's always helpful to understand what the purpose of the GPT is or what it can do. So one thing that's a real fun exercise is if you have an error in a Tableau calculation, and it's like, I'm trying to figure out why I have that error. And let me see if I could pull that up so you have a better idea of what that error is. And you've probably come across a lot of this. When you're working with Tableau, you get these random error messages that don't really tell you what's going on. The cool thing with this GPT is that you can just paste that error message, don't provide it any context, and usually will troubleshoot appropriately and give you the right solution. So now it's telling me, yes, it's an if statement. It's missing certain things here. So what it's telling me is that it's missing an else what. So it now has the corrected calculation here. It says SQL, but it's technically VizQL because it's Tableau language. But that's how you could fix it right away, copy and paste that, and it should update your calculations on the spot. People use this a lot of times to reverse engineer some problems and so forth that they're working on the dashboard. One thing, if it's a public visualization, another thing you could do too is if you really want to understand what's going on with the dashboard and get very good information about the data and so forth, is that you could upload the XML of the Tableau workbook and get good information on what's going on with that workbook and get a full understanding of what's there. Again, it should definitely need to be public information. Don't share any private work dashboards or anything like that there. But if you're creating a visualization or if you're downloading a visualization from Tableau Public and trying to figure out how something is working, you definitely want to go ahead and review that because it'll make it a lot easier for you to understand. And the other thing that comes naturally with GPTs is that you could do it in your language too. So if English is not your language, you could translate it for you in pretty much every language. I think Swiss German is off the books because that's kind of a niche language, but there's a lot of other languages that it works, Thai and Japanese and pretty much everything. And the language model is much better now because it's more context aware. So that's one thing to keep in mind is that everything you see generally in Tableau, or 90% of what you see in Tableau, is always English-based. So that excludes most of the world. So utilizing these tools helps you understand the world in your language. So that's one thing you really need to think about. It's like, should I be spending a lot of time understanding this in English when I don't really, English is maybe my third or fourth language? You definitely want to utilize tools that help you explain it to you in your language, in your cultural context. The next one is super fun. It's called VizCritique Pro. So basically, and I already had these two built when we talked about them, but I've iterated a lot on these, quite a bit on these. So again, as I mentioned, how do I score this? Can you score my Viz? Review this dashboard suite. So you could review not just one dashboard, but multiple dashboards, and it could score everything together. And also, initially, I just had scoring, and you didn't really have an opportunity to not have scoring, but some people may not want to see scoring. I think scoring is fun because it gives you an idea of, without really digging into the information about it too much and understanding that. So the other thing about this is that you could simply just upload a picture of your dashboard. One thing I would point out, though, is that if you have a lot of interactivity that you want to show and have evaluated, you'll want to do multiple pictures of the dashboard just to show its interactive parts. Like if you have tooltips or filters and so forth, you'll want to go through that because it'll have more context because it only could score what it can see. But this example is a dashboard I built. I don't want to share other people's dashboards, but this was Earth is on Fire. It was a global warming data visualization where it was gray before when it was cooler, but some people are experiencing warmer. So it does this. This is something I created maybe 5 years ago. So I just upload this. I didn't share any information and ask anything about it. I didn't provide any additional context. And what it does, and thankfully it likes my visualization, otherwise that would have been quite embarrassing, but too long didn't read. It provides a lot of information. It provides a short amount of information on top so it doesn't overwhelm you. But it also gives you more information that you probably didn't even think of a lot about when you're building the visualization. Who's my audience? Why is this important? What questions are you trying to answer? And then it provides you a scorecard up front that provides a very brief description. This came after hundreds and hundreds of visualization tests and probably a dozen iterations of this over time to get the scoring right. Because mind you, weighting the scoring on this is the hardest part. It really is because it's very difficult for it to understand what's good and what's bad and the deltas in between. So that was very difficult. But the other thing, too, is that you get a scorecard on top, and then it goes into much more detail in the bottom. So it tells you, what the audience is likely, who you're catering to, and what can be done. And the best thing about this is that if I scroll all the way down, is this is fun. It gives you a score tier. So the score tier is great data with its life together. So that means it's pretty good. But it provides you a recommended order of what you could fix and make it even better and how that would impact it. This is the most important piece because the actionable feedback, it's fun to have a tool that scores, but if it doesn't provide you actionable feedback and it doesn't provide a time estimate of what that would cost and how that would impact the visualization, it's not super helpful. So that's the most important piece is you want to look at the top recommendations, see whether it's worth your time to make those updates and what that means. So I don't have enough here for excess ticks, and I agree with that. It was more of an artsy visualization, but it would be super helpful to have that so viewers could understand exactly what it's saying. Also clarifying the legend, scale, and units and make it a little bit clearer. And explain central vertical highlights, why it's harder to see and hard to immediately grasp. So there's things that you could do to make fixes in under an hour that will improve it and make the visualizations more accessible. So this is not only just catered to public dashboards, but also business dashboards. And it's kind of a smart tracker behind the scenes that determines scoring based on the type of dashboard that you're sharing. But if you want to focus on certain elements of your dashboard, share that. It's not going to impact the scoring, but it's going to impact how it provides you feedback. Meaning that, or you could say, don't score this particular portion. I'm working on this, and it will omit that from scoring, but it won't raise the score of other stuff, if that makes sense. Any questions on that so far? Oh, and Annabelle, you're sharing these as we're going? Thank you.
Yes.
Save me work.
MVP.
Data Mockstar, this was the one we talked about in a lot of detail here. And this one's a ton of fun. And I'm surprised. It has probably close to 5,000 combos right now. But if it were me, this was a dream thing. And I got this from a work example. Somebody had brought up something about pulling data from a PDF. I'm like, how about if we could do this, we could do this, and we could do that? And that's how Data Mockstar came to be. And then again, as I share with everything, is how do I get started? So what I want to do right now gives you some examples of data sets that you could do. I would always suggest here, because there's a lot of things that you could do with this particular GPT. So always select this, but I want to do something quickly. So what it does is I want to do a mock data set on LinkedIn. So it helps you define a data set, provide you with a data dictionary up front, which is pretty awesome. This was something I wish that was available to me when I was building a lot of POCs and MVPs, especially working with Macaru. Awesome tool, but it just made my head bang a lot just because of all the work that you needed to do with it and understanding some of the business logic that didn't make a lot of sense to me. This gives you a really good understanding of what's going on here, what the column name is, what type it is, and what are the notes of the columns. And it gives you the distributions when relevant too. So that's super helpful. And then geography, you could say what geography you want, but it gives you a default. And then it gives you information as, maybe we want to do this, but you could also ask for it to come up with outliers as well. Maybe there could be a concentration of people in Iowa or Arkansas, for example, which you could do some analytics on for POC. And then it gives you a 5-row preview. And then you can look at it to see if it's exactly what you want. And then if you like everything, it will go ahead and default to a CSV. It defaults to 1,000 rows because typically that's great for MVPs and POCs. But you could also do this and have it download in SQL or JSON or Excel, and you could do full schemas as well. Just remember that there can be some limitations with memory. So you may want it to iterate certain things like, I want 20,000 rows of data. You may want to say, maybe we should do this in 1 or 2 or 3 different outputs just to be safe, and then you could union them later. Next up, choose your own adventure, the title of this conversation right here. So I created, long story short, we don't have too much time, so I don't want to go into too much detail here, but working with the model, the 5+ models on ChatGPT, I understood it can go places where it couldn't go before. So ultimately, when I grew up, there's only one type of book I loved that was a fiction book, and it was choose your own adventure books. Everything else was like sports books or almanacs and so forth. But this felt realistic, and it felt like I was learning something, and it was a lot of fun because you choose your own. You're the person that makes the decisions, and effectively these are just all workflows, and they're cumbersome workflows when you're going through a book and paging through them. But what happens if you're doing that in real life, when you have real situations? And for example, here in Tableau, you have different types of situations that you encounter as a Tableau person, whether it is building a dashboard, whether it is receiving feedback. And you could also provide your own problem for it to help you think through. So it's almost like a gamified thinking tool that helps you work from beginning to end. And I know Annabelle loves Chatty, and she's played around with this a little bit. And what's your fun takeaway for this tool, Tableau Quest?
Did I play with Tableau Quest or with Data Quest?
You played with, I believe you played with both, but Data Quest.
That's probably true. No, I really love it because first you can also, like you said, like choose your own adventure, so it makes it more fun. I choose like a polar, like from like the 30s or something like that.
Right. Yeah, here's Data Quest. Exactly. So I guess the gamified portion at the end is really fun because you can go on Learning Paths or you can go on Quest, but you could generate your own pixel art from Tableau. Yeah. So based on how well you did with your Quest or Learning Path, what happens is it gives you Tableau Sparkle from 1 to 3. So if you have level 3 Sparkle, it means you did really great with your Quest. If you have level 1, you did fine, but there's some things that could be improved. So that's a fun way, and it's all pixel art. So it's and it's all based on your specific quest. So if your quest was kind of going through a dashboard during a presentation, it would be a pixel art representation of that. And if you did really good, there would be a lot of Tableau Sparkle. With the Data Quest one, there's also the opportunity to have pixel art at the end of each of these quests. And they're built kind of similarly. The difference is that Tableau is focused on pretty much anything related to Tableau, where Data Quest takes on a whole universe of data. So it could be data visualization, it could be data engineering, It could be data product management. It could be working with stakeholders and different types of stakeholders when working with data. So there's a lot of things that are different about these, and that's why they're their own tools. But I really encourage you to have fun, play with this, provide feedback, share with me on LinkedIn or directly, or if you post about it. I don't care. As long as the feedback is constructive, I'm happy to work on it and make those improvements. And those are a couple things I wanted to point out really quick. I did recently make a couple updates to ones I'll go over very quickly. So as I mentioned with the data mock star, that it creates kind of a data dictionary for you. This is a dashboard dictionary that you could help create, because the worst thing when you're creating dashboards is creating documentation for those dashboards. And as covered earlier, if you have proprietary business information or business dashboards, dumbing them up enough where you could just kind of replace some of the terminology when you make the updates. But yes, this is a tool to really help you get 80% there with your dashboard documentation, the least favorite thing for pretty much any Tableau developer. So that's an important note here. Here's another one that's called Dashboard Detective. So a lot of these tools I built were built for people that are developing, but this tool is specifically for viewers. So a lot of times people are given dashboards that they don't understand. They look at it and it's like, I don't even know where to start. What is this trying to answer? I'm new to data viz, or maybe the person didn't follow best practices or whatnot, and it's very difficult to make heads or tails of a dashboard. So it would be helpful to have a tool to be able to understand what that dashboard is trying to relay and share that in a way where a person with limited background in what was being built could really understand quickly. So this is a tool for viewers, and it's called Dashboard Detective by me. And I have just two more left. And this is the meta of all meta dash, two more featured ones. I have more I've built, but two more featured ones. So this is GPT Architect Pro 5.2. And the reason why it's 5.2, it's built for the 5.2 model. And this is a system. So it's not only a GPT model evaluator. It's also a GPT model builder. And it's a GPT model that works with itself. It can evaluate and build at the same time. It's the only tool like that I really seen on ChatGPT, and it's actually kind of gaining some traction. And also it covers a lot with, I'll do a real quick with the high level, just so you have an understanding of what it does, but it has ethical guardrails built right in, and it really considers ethics as you're building out these tools. And it makes you, and it forces you to really consider these ethics as well. So it has a dual mode system, build and evaluate, and it's smart. It does it behind the scenes based on what your prompt is. The build mode makes it production ready, or helps you create a tool that's production ready. So basically you can come with it with a half-baked custom GPT, or just an idea of a GPT. Is this possible? Help me start building this out. And then you can work with it and iterate. And what it delivers is fun name options, benefits based on the variance, full system instructions based on the models, how the model works now, knowledge, architecture, design. So that's another thing, is that a lot of people think that building custom GPTs are just patching together prompts. If you're doing that, you're doing it all wrong, and the GPT is not going to really be of value. The delta between that GPT and just using a generic model is very low. And then it has a 4-stage workflow. It's kind of identified up there. And then in evaluate mode, as discussed, it looks at technical accuracy, practical usability, knowledge, actions, user experience, and production readiness. But it also goes deep into the ethical part of it too. So if there's something wrong with something not evident that works well ethically, it's going to point that out and make suggestions on how to improve that. And that's so important that people are not really considering, or it's very difficult to consider because you're not always in the person's shoes that would have concerns about those ethical items. So that's really important part of this, is that ethics is a huge thing with this GPT. So finally, we have one I just shared on Monday, and this is the Florledge twins. They have an awesome blog, and they're fun together. So a big part of what they do is that they are identical twins, but they have different personalities, slightly different personalities, but they also love to work together. So this is a tool that uses something called the Florledge Fetch. So that's a custom API call I built just to get the information from their blog, and then works with you to get the content from their blog in a way that hopefully makes sense to you, and that gives you a nice rundown of what that blog is without deep diving into it. The other thing too is that you could have really fun interactions if you're a fan of the Florledge twins, is to kind of get what their take would be on certain things. Maybe Kevin wrote a blog about something, but you would want Ken's take on that blog. So based on the personality profiles that I built for them, you can kind of get that as well. And you can get fun, silly stuff too, is like which Florledge is the best. And of course, people are asking me, there's a known quote unquote third Florledge that's called Keith. So I think on April Fool's Day, I'll add Keith profile to this. So like this is kind of the fun banter that you would get, but realistically, you're getting 90% content, maybe 10% personality, because the content is the most important part to everybody that's working with this tool. But I would agree the answer is yes. You want them both, and you would want to work with them both because they have different skills and they complement each other really well. And I think that's why so many people gravitate to what they do together, because their skill sets complement really well with each other, kind of like Annabelle's and mine.
I thought that you will call this GPT like Keith, like the third one.
Maybe that will be the April Fool's joke. Don't change a thing until the Keith Florledge. And only have a Keith personality and just change it for a day. So this is a quick rundown, a super quick rundown on the GPTs. And I apologize if I was talking too fast, but there's a lot of GPTs to cover in a short period of time. And I wanted to make sure to get you a really good eyeful of the GPTs that we covered today.
I think this is great. I mean, even just, from you had a lot to show a year and a half ago, but to see how it's grown and to see what's added and to see the logic that's been kind of baked in and evolved into it is really, really cool. I think this is a good overview. And it's kind of back to that question. It might have been Denise who had asked, how do you get started with AI? And in going through this, my takeaway is, go try these, go plug some stuff in, go make some with dummy data, not sensitive data, but go make some mistakes, go see what works and what doesn't work. I think that's an underrated thing. I hear a lot in our kind of like budding AI developer, analytics engineering sort of thing that we have at InterWorks, is this idea of go use these tools, go see what works, but just as important, go see what doesn't work. Because there's sometimes there's just use cases or things where maybe it doesn't work the way you thought it did. Maybe you need a different approach, or maybe, you know what, actually this is something that is more positioned for a human approach, more positioned for like a quality control approach. And the more you use these things, the more you see the need for that humanity in certain things. And you had mentioned it with the ethics, Adam. That's a huge, huge point of where that human intervention and that human oversight is really vital. I'm curious to that end, and we can ask. I think Ritesh had one outstanding question, but I did want to ask, while we're kind of on that topic, what do you think is the importance of kind of that human component in all of this, especially as we start using more GPTs, as there's more, as AI becomes more complex and has more use cases? What is the benefit of having that human component?
Well, to me, it's a requirement. So all my GPTs, even though I try to make them as easy as possible up front, they require human interaction. So when you're utilizing a tool like GPT Architect Pro 5.2, sure, I could build a tool that will make a pretty good GPT on its own without really a lot of input from you, but that takes out what makes the GPT purposeful in yours. You don't want all GPTs to be the same. And if there's a bunch of the same GPTs out there, you don't know which one to use, which one's using ethics and so forth. So being able to come up with something, have you involved with it and make it yours and have your personality come out with it, makes it better. And it's something that you could use and actually speak to and want to work with and produce. If you have something that's all hands off, you're generally going to forget it. and maybe just share the tool, but you're not going to make updates and so forth. You won't treat it as a product. And the main thing with human interaction pieces, first of all, without that, you're going to get a bunch of hallucinations and you're going to get a bunch of wrong information, and it's going to hurt the ability to trust the content that's coming out of it. Two is you're not going to be empowered to build or create anything on top of it. Oftentimes, I like to think of like this tool, for example. I've worked with this tool quite a bit and I built with it, but I don't do 100% of my work from it. I consider it a really great starting point, at least for some of the stuff I do. And I want to put in a lot of what I would do into it to make it better. So one of the things that it does is that you don't have to create a lot with yourself. What you could do is work with it and work with it as a partner. So you're working with AI as a teammate as opposed to somebody that's just going to make something for you. You're not task mastering it. You're working with it as a teammate. So your input is baked right into whatever you build. So that's the most important part of that right now. And two is that for anything, especially as people are concerned about job loss and so forth, you don't ever want to take humans completely out of something. For one, it's going to be difficult to understand what your value is. But building tools that incorporates human interaction, that's a lot of value add right there. So it's not only to build, but it's also to learn. So incorporating learning with human and AI interaction is super important to what we're going to be experiencing in the future.
Ritesh had asked a question kind of during the demos section or right before. He'd asked, can you share any insights or learnings you have on building semantic layer and data governance for use with agentic AI? So that component of it.
So that's quite interesting. It all starts with the data. So it's not even just the AI tool itself. You need to make sure the data is in the right spot, governed, not redundant. And that's the part people miss, is that you could build a good AI tool that creates a semantic layer, but if your data is in poor shape, it's going to come up with really bad information for you. So focus on the data and work on the data. And many tools could get you from point B to point C, but only you could really put it from point A to make it good enough to go to point B. So you really need to get the data. So one of the mistakes people make is they throw in all their data. So it can come from a data lake or whatnot. And it doesn't really work good with unstructured data. You need to find a way to structure, whether the unstructured data, you create the metadata, but that has its limitations. You really want really good structured model data that you could feed into it, because that will give you better information and better clues as to what you could do with it on a semantic level. And I agree that in the next couple of years, the semantic layer is going to be more and more relevant as we go on, just because a lot of people can get what they need from working with and communicating with and understanding the semantic layer. They'll be able to understand their data a little bit more to understand what it could build downstream, whether that's dashboards or whatnot, or metrics.
That's great. That's great intel. Okay, this should be an easy one, but Irene had asked, is there something similar to Tableau Quest for Power BI? Have you seen anything out in the wild that for Power BI users or non-Tableau users, is there anything like this? Or there, just frankly, there's not an Adam Mico for Power BI. I don't know what to tell you.
I think I'm the only one that really built these type of tools, but I would work with Data Quest, because I think that can get you a good portion of what you would want to get from the Power BI side of it, because that's part, not a secret, no secret. Other tools besides Tableau are covered in the Data Quest part of it. So I would utilize the Data Quest one if you want to work with Power BI insight there, because that's more tool agnostic. It actually is tool agnostic, but also covers a lot of popular tools, including Power BI.
Awesome.
But I know you can still use a Viz Critique. You can still use Data Mockstar even if you use Power BI.
Yeah, that's good intel. That's good intel to be able to, because a lot, at the end of the day, obviously they're unique visual analytics platforms, but when you
Right.
look at the underlying fundamentals of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, it's largely the same.
And I've done that intentionally just to give people an opportunity to work with it that aren't just Tableau people. So if it reads Tableau on the GPT, that means it's not tool agnostic. But if it reads anything but Tableau, that generally means it's tool agnostic. So as you mentioned, Annabelle, Vis Critique Pro is a great example. You could even use PowerPoint or those fun exploding pie charts in Excel. Evaluate. I don't know how well that would evaluate, but it can. It's a value. It's funny because I tested it before with non-dashboard stuff, like a person's picture, and it says, please send me a data visualization. So it has to be a data visualization, and hopefully that's what you're using for it. But yeah, any tool would work. So Power BI would be a great use case for that.
Yeah. A PowerPoint, I'm sure that you can also analyze a PowerPoint slide deck and give you
D3, anything. Yep.
I really love also DataQuest, not only because it's funny, but also because it was real world question. And some were strategic, some more how you will present this and that was very interesting to think.
Yeah, I have a lot of built-in seeds there. So there's 100 seeds for each, but it's intended to be kind of like starting points for it. So pretty much any type of situation in those realms should be coverable, including any ad hoc stuff that you have from work. If you have a data problem or a Tableau problem, the Quest series is kind of perfect for you to kind of figure out where to go and where the wins could be and what to consider for the potential wins.
This is great. I know we're at 11:02, so we're right at a little over time, but I did have one question if both of you have the time to answer it. It's one I wanted to actually ask Annabelle, and Adam, feel free to chime in too, because I know you've been working with her a lot. But Annabelle, as you've kind of gone on this journey with Adam, the AI journey, and learning about things, about whether it's Tableau Next or all these different GPTs, and you've gotten your hands on them. What's your journey with AI been like over the past year and a half? How do you feel like you've grown, in this in your AI skills, but also in partnership with Adam?
So with Adam, I learned a lot about Tableau Next, and we had a lot of fun. I played with this GTP, especially when we were like writing the Tableau Next blogs, because we need like fake data. So I also use Data Mockstar, and that I really love it. And I follow several training on AI, especially how to ethic and AI. I haven't played around to build a GPT yet. I don't know. Maybe I got bored in the following months and I start doing that. But I will say that I also play around a lot about ChatGPT. And I discovered that you can become very dependent and use your skills, more or less like what the discussion is going on the blog, on the chat. And I said that there is also a way, instead of asking a ChatGPT hey, fix the code for me, write this piece for me, write this letter, whatever email, you can say, hey, that is my draft. Right. Tell me how I can improve it. So you learn. It will suggest, hey, you should change that and that. You try again and you try again. And that is a way also to learn better. Use technology.
And for me, it's like looking at somebody new and excited about the potential, but also she provides great feedback as to what could be the pitfalls as well. So she has a good view of both great and bad. And part of the reason why I build the GPTs the way I do is that I want to encourage interaction as much as possible. I could see where people just get brain rot from being too dependent on a quick response, copy and pasting it and throwing it into a chat or their LinkedIn or whatnot. But that's not what it's useful for. It's useful for I think it's useful if you're not building GPTs as a learning partner and as a teammate. So you could bounce things off it, be critical, challenge answers, especially if you're concerned about the repercussions of those answers, or maybe it's not thinking of it in the right way, because oftentimes they're sharing information that may not be fully accurate or be something that could be damaging to you. So you have to think of ways, maybe this approach doesn't work. So let's think of other approaches. Give me other alternatives besides the one that you shared. and it's really good at working with you in that regard. That's why you refer to the GPT as Chatty when you're working with Chatty, because you're a teammate with Chatty.
Exactly.
Chatty's not just telling you what to do. Chatty is your teammate. Sometimes it annoys you, but then it works with you. And you'll be able to learn more if you use it correctly. So use it as a learning tool. Don't use it as a primarily as a content creator.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we're at 11:06. I think we've answered pretty much all the questions, but anything else before we part ways? I know. So just to reiterate what's in the chat, we had mentioned, yeah, we'll be sending an email with a recording of this. It'll be on YouTube as well, and we'll include all these links to the different GPTs. Yeah, great reminder, Ritesh. Be careful how much you share with GPTs. Yeah, always good to be smart. But we'll have that for everyone, and you can share with other people who maybe didn't tune in. But anything before we part ways? Great. Well, thank you, Annabelle.
For the next one.
Yes. Yeah, join us for the next one in March. But as always, Annabelle, Adam, it's very informational, incredibly practical and useful information. I really want to go play with these as well now. I want to go try them out and have some fun. So thanks for building them. Thanks for what you both do for the community. And with that, I'll say have a great day.
Thanks,
you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Adam, for coming.
Of course.